action! Before we get started, I want to make something explicitly clear. I've been giving this series a fair chance, even going all the way back to the New Generation movie. I wanted to like this series as much as I did Friendship is Magic, but the writing has just not been as good, nor the stories as engaging. And I'm not that guy that goes into G5 hating it just because it's not G4. Do you know how badly I want to come on this screen and say, wow, did you guys see that new chapter of G5? That was awesome. I have extensively discussed the Make Your Mark series, and up until Chapter 4, there's really only been one episode I've liked, and that was Portrait of a Princess. But, looking back, it was still only as good as an average episode of Friendship is Magic. I know I've said that before, but it needed to be repeated just to give you guys a baseline for my overall outlook on the first 3 chapters. And really think about that. Of all the episodes that Make Your Mark has released, only one is passable. But okay, enough of my ramblings on the previous chapters. Today we're here to discuss Chapter 4. Is this chapter a step up from the previous releases? Is this one actually better? So join me today as we discuss Chapter 4 of Make Your Mark and see where the series shined and where things went wrong. Along with the regular episodes, we have another 44-minute special called Varietal Woodstock, which I'll discuss separately from the rest of the chapter. So this plot revolves around the Lumabloom event, wherein flowers and crystals grow during this time, creating a unique atmosphere, with Pip having the idea to hold a concert here. The conflict comes from 2 sources, the first being the presence of the Troggles, who are these mythical spirit creatures that haunt Bridalwood. I have more observations on these guys, but we'll come back to that later. So, what did this special do right? The songs were decent. The atmosphere, despite the oversaturation on everything, gave the location and every pony a unique look, with all the interesting costume designs. And the designs of the bands are nice with their diverse looks, and I will say the G1 style art for the Dreamlands was pretty clever. I liked the moment when Ruby Jubilee had creative block, and then Pip and Izzy stepped in, who have previously experienced this issue in Izzy Does It, and are able to help her out of her funk. It was a nice little character moment. So, what are my issues with this special? Well, first off, it's the whole headliner problem. Now, I'm not a music or concert expert by any means, but while bands in the past have a whole ego thing about going first, a trending thing I've noticed recently is that concerts will routinely have multiple headliners. So if I'm missing an obvious issue, educate me, because otherwise this conflict seems rather minimalistic. Had there been an actual rivalry between the different bands, then this gimmick might work, but then that would introduce a whole rivalry plotline that would have extended the plot and took time away from the rest of the story. And knowing that the bands don't hate each other, that plot kind of feels like it's just spinning its wheels until the inevitable reveal of all 3 heading the concert. Plus, the whole headliner plotline is completely invalidated, as later when Pip and the others are attempting to fix this issue, the bands are all willing to switch places, and it just feels artificial to keep the conflict going. All this time could have been spent expanding upon the Truggle lore or learning more about the bands. We spend some time with the Dreamlands or Ruby Jubilee, but Electric Blue barely gets any exposure. I do appreciate that the plot actually gets rolling rather quickly, but the second act does drag its hooves at some times, like that whole bit with Hitch wanting to get fries, but ultimately doesn't. It's not funny and accomplishes nothing. But the thing that made me shake my head the most was the Troggles themselves. They make no sense! Okay, so they appear with the Lumabloom event. Why? I don't know, but fine. They steal voices because... I don't know. They wait until night because... I don't know. It's revealed that the Rubies can defeat them. Again, fine. But what do? They actively pick them up! What?
What is this, Jonestown? What the fuck? They're just gonna commit mass suicide?
Why would they pick up the very thing that kills them? That's like Superman going to buy kryptonite at a kryptonite store. With that out of the way, I will say the special is still alright. But let's continue with the meat of Chapter 4, with the actual episodes. I figure before I tear into the series, I should bring up more positive aspects. Alright. Of all the plotlines in this current release, Misty's path to reformation has been executed the best, and has pretty much become the most developed character in the entire series. Also, I liked how dark Opaline was willing to go with Sparky Boom Man.
I just want to watch this stinky little dragon fall first. Holy shit!
Oh, and speaking of Sparky Boom Man, this chapter already earns a ton of points for the simple fact that he's much more downplayed. It doesn't feel as annoying or intrusive as with the previous chapters. The animation, while still not as good as the movie, has improved a bit. There's still some jankiness with the characters' movements, but overall their gestures feel a little more smooth and natural. And that's pretty much it as far as the positives. And now is the time where I begin to rip into this chapter. Once again, the weakest element of G5 is its writing. Now, for the sake of my sanity and the audience's, I won't be going through every single part that made me shake my head, but I will identify one of many episodes and scenes that really cement the problems with this chapter's writing. And it's literally the next episode top remodel.
Hey, Pip. Remind me why we are in here again?
Yeah, not that it isn't totally cool to be in a freaky empty building, but it is kind of freaky and empty.
This is such a lazy way to start the plot. So I'm thinking about this. Before they head inside the building, she goes up to her friends at the Bright House and says, "Hey, let's go to Cantor Logic." And the others say, "Why?" And Pip doesn't say. And collectively, the others go, "Okay." And they ask again when they're already at their destination. Just a terrible transition to get your plot rolling. And then there's that weird reveal at the end that those rodents left Zephyr Heights traveling miles and miles, conveniently making their home in Cantor Logic, all because they were sick of Pip's music and... what? And to top it off, there was this.
It's pretty impressive. And, technically, it is still mine. Booyah!
Is that true?
No way. It belongs to all of us now.
No, he still owns it. It's shut down, but it's still his place. You can't just claim a property even if it's not being actively used. I'm pretty sure that's, illegal. The Jinxy Games is bizarre and has a couple laughs here and there, and I kinda like that we're expanding upon the romance of Alpha Biddle and Queen Haven, giving them something to do, but otherwise the episode was okay. Sunny Side Up had some cute moments with Sunny and Hitch, and their food fight was fun, and the inner conflict with Misty came off as genuine and was a decent episode. Main Masquerade Ball's only interesting element was the whole Alicorn book thing, which barely came into play in this chapter. But Misty also stood out, again seeing more of her inner conflict brew about revealing her true intentions, and it was really interesting. The designs for all the ponies in this episode, woof. The colors and sparkles on their legs and masks are fine, but the eyeshadow, just the makeup and how it makes their eyes look, it just... And Sunny just comes off as bothersome with the whole dance routine thing, but I have more on her later. The song was decent, and the dancing sequence was fun with its kinetic choreography. So another okay episode. A Little Horse was the one I feared the most, with Pip being sick. And to a degree, the B-plot with Sunny did get a little tired, but the support of all her Pip's friends was nice, and like Testing 1, 2, 3, an episode about something mundane turned out to be something better. Now it's nowhere near as good as that episode, as it feels like it's just spinning its wheels by the halfway point with how the interactions are going, but it did a decent job with the material given. Missing the Mark, a fitting metaphor for the series, is probably the best non-special episode of Chapter 4, but even then it manages to screw up the ending. But again, I'll get back to that later. The overall pacing is pretty good, especially in comparison to the other episodes. It doesn't dilly-dally, it gets in, tells its story with minimal padding, and this was really the only episode I ever felt invested because things were finally happening to push the plot forward. Good guys and bad guys meet, Misty's Cutie Mark arc concludes. There was good, if very minimal, action in the fight scene, though still nowhere as good as the T-Rex Twilight battle. And if it seems like I'm struggling to comment on the episodes, that's because I really didn't have much to say. In most episodes of G4, there were character flaws and growth to analyze, lore to be discovered, something I could actually spend time talking about. Most of the time, I never felt invested in any of these stories, and despite a couple funny things here and there, I'm just staring bored at the screen with the drawn out or superfluous dialogue and slow pacing. And it's this kind of lazy writing and pacing that just drags this and the majority of this chapter's episodes. And the humor misses most of the time, or just gets a chuckle. In fact, there were only 2 times I ever laughed legit, and it was these 2 scenes.
Now he and Cloud Puff are they on water skis? Yeah, it's water skis, and it looks like they're being pulled by a gaggle of keys.
Tough it out. We all get sick sometimes. It's a part of life.
Yeah, did you just come here to be mean to me until I feel better?
No, not totally.
Most other jokes were lame or poorly executed. Something else that bothered me were the times when Twilight or G4 references were made. I won't go too far on this as I've already talked about it much more extensively in my videos on Opaline and Alicorns and my G5 reboot versus sequel discussion. But suffice it to say, every time G4 characters, locations, or elements are mentioned, it just confuses or angers the audience. The whole Opaline growing up with Luna and Celestia is absolutely ridiculous and makes no sense. This doesn't make the audience want to know more about modern Equestria's lore, it makes them want to realize that a much better show existed before this, and they question why they're watching this show. Okay, let's talk about our main characters. While they have been consistent for the most part, they really haven't grown. Compare them to the end of Chapter 4 to where they began in Chapter 1. They feel exactly the same, or worse in some cases. Let's go back to G4 again. Fluttershy in the beginning was an extreme introvert, scared of her own shadow at times. Then she learned to be more assertive, and she would become more confident as the series went on. Rainbow Dash had a huge ego about her, but over time learned to reel it back, but still remained awesome. Twilight the Bookworm learned the magic of friendship, became an alicorn and princess, and eventual ruler of all Equestria, utilizing all the friendship lessons she's learned over the years. And I could go on with the rest of the main 6, but the point is, you can chart their development to becoming more three-dimensional characters in its full 9-season run. In G5, there's only been one single callback that showed character growth in Chapter 4, which I've already mentioned, and that was Pip and Izzy helping Ruby Jubilee with her creative block. But otherwise, Pip is still the same princess pop star social media guru, Izzy is still the eccentric creative one, even Zip, one of my favorite characters, feels stagnant at this point. She's the only character who cares about the overall plot with Twilight, and main story overall, and the only one with any initiative to want to save Equestria from a looming threat. Hitch is a dad and sheriff, though I use that term lightly as his profession rarely comes into play. You know, that one defining character trait from the movie of him being an overly obsessed law enforcer that made him interesting and funny? Yeah. Okay, to be fair, he has accepted and embraced his Flora magic, which is a plus, but again, from a character standpoint, not much different. And then there's Sunny. How is it that her character continues to decline? She's supposed to be the main character. She led a crusade that led to the return of magic to Equestria and brought the 3 pony tribes together after years of separation. She did something extremely unorthodox, defied the lies told by every pony in Maritime Bay, and listened to the wisdom of her father to believe in her ideals, and that belief recreated that once lost union. Simple story, but that whole adventure defined her character. Then we get to the series where her role as main character continues to diminish as the chapters continue to release. And this passiveness continues throughout the series. She feels like a background character at this point, with Zip taking her place as the lead. Chapter 4, Sunny, just now feels like whatever the plot needs her to be. One episode she wants to do an elaborate dance number for the main grade ball. Okay. She goes along with the gang going to Cantologic for no unexplained reason and takes over her property illegally. Alright. Sunny's side up and the battle with Opaline are literally the only times in this chapter that Sunny feels like she's taking an active role in a story. Otherwise, it feels like she's just there. Yes, she's supportive to all of her friends' endeavors, which is a trait she's expressed numerous times in the past, but the only reason she's the main character in name only is because of her alicorn powers. That's it. And what about Sprout? He's barely been utilized in this series and is pretty much just there for comic relief. Give him something to do. Maybe we could have had him turn Cantologic, a location originally built against Pegasi and unicorns, could now be proactive in generating machines to help benefit Maritime Bay? Or maybe giant robots to help destroy Opaline? The Queen and Alphabetal's relationship is quirky, but it feels like it's not really gonna go anywhere. And as for Misty, I've talked extensively in her Reformation video, so see that one for more details. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's move on to something else. One of the more frustrating elements that's bothered me since Chapter 2 is Opaline's magic. There is no consistency to her abilities. She claims that she needs Dragonfire to reach her full potential, but she can still do various spells such as place a binding spell on Misty and even perform magical blasts.
I'm a fire in my laser!
She received some Dragonfire from Misty, but it was only enough to give her some magic and sustain flight for only a few seconds. Yet now she can fire full-on energy beams, but conveniently loses energy when she tries to retrieve the Dragonstone, which I'll get back to in a second. But does she now just recharge her energy naturally over time, and Dragonfire just restores her instantly, or what? Was that one single ball of fire Misty retrieved enough that she can just slowly recharge? Or does she secretly recover her magic via the Tome of Eternal Darkness?
Miracle part of Santeria.
So back to this Dragon Stone. Opaline now not only needs Dragonfire, but now all of a sudden she needs this Dragon Stone to complete her domination plans. I get that she needed to wait until magic returned until she could use telekinesis to retrieve it, but this thing opens up so many questions. Who created this Dragon Stone? Why is it here in this crystalline formation? Also, if magic just returned to Equestria, how is it floating? Is it enchanted to float? Otherwise, without magic, wouldn't it have just dropped in that crevasse or just stayed there forever? Also, how does she know where that stone was? Who put it there? How does Opaline know how it works? She instinctively knows how to use it on Sparky Boom Man to steal his Dragonfire with no difficulty.
It just raises too many questions.
These are simple, logical questions any viewer would ask. Oh, and way to hold attention on her losing her chance to gain the stone when it falls into that crevasse. A critical object necessary to her plans could potentially be lost or extremely difficult to acquire, something that could drastically affect her plans, and possibly even ruin them forever. But hey, dramatic storytelling is overrated, as literally the next episode, her magic recharges enough and she just gets it off screen. Finally, way to reduce the intimidation factor of your main antagonist by having Sunny dominate her and trapping her in a bubble. And then the gang literally just waltzes out the front door. No, just wrong. A confrontation between the two opposing forces was inevitable, but the good guys just walking away with minimal damage is not how you tell this story. Why is this bad? Well, in the last episode of Chapter 4, the other dragons across the world are now awake, for some reason, and now Opaline will have a near infinite well of power when she successfully steals their magic. That sounds like an interesting way to go with the story, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because the main five have just beat Opaline. They just did it. They proved that the magic of friendship is more powerful than Opaline's fire magic, even at conceivably full or stronger power. So why should I care when they defeat her again in the next chapter? What are you gonna show me that I have not already seen? It's these things and more that make me ask the question to the writers and production staff.
Did you guys ever watch the show?
Oh, and by the way, guys, I know you just escaped a very precarious situation with Opaline, and I know you'll want to recover and whatnot, but do you have no sense of immediacy? Zephyr Heights has guards, or at least you could tell them about the evil fire alicorn and what's going on. You know where she is, and that she has malevolent intentions. Now I know that would pad out the episode to include a whole mobilization scene, but at least have our heroes established that they have to warn others of the fire alicorn. But nope. Why make sense or have characters make logical decisions? Okay, so with all my ranting, I know you're all wondering about the title of this video and why Chapter 4 is better. Well, I wasn't as angry or annoyed as I was during Chapter 2. That's pretty much it. I had tons of questions about Chapter 4 that puzzled me, but I never felt as pissed off as comparatively in Chapter 2, which is why I say Chapter 4 is slightly better, but it's more of a apathetic positive. And that's about it, guys. I don't know what else I can say. We'll see if the final chapters can rally a satisfying ending and hopefully lead to something that makes G5 memorable for its positives rather than its shortcomings. Well, that's it for today, guys. Until next time, MC out!